I want to welcome everyone here tonight to our amazing panel, Secrets of the Soil. This is the 17th Future Thought Leader panel that we at Very Good Food have put on, and we have housed them with UCTV. And over the 10 years that we have been doing this program, we have garnered nearly 16 million viewers. The first program was 10 years ago called Soil Matters. And here we are, full circle again, with two amazing panelists to talk about the secrets of the soil, a continuing and growing topic of interest and import in the world as we are all one. Now, most importantly, I'm going to introduce to you our panelists. So on my left is Alyssa Frutos, who's a farmer and owner of Ranchito Milkyway Farmstand in Bonita. She and her husband, Christian, who's here tonight, right? Oh, he's not here, sorry. Started Ranchito Milkyway in 2021. They started the farm knowing they'd need connection to stay grounded to their direct community. And they host a weekly farm stand, community workshops, and farm-to-table dinners, and also a CSA membership program. On my right is Dr. Sarah Allard. She's the executive director of the Soil Health Center at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, which I think the first question is the Soil Health Center at the Institute of Oceanography. So we're going to start that. A cross-disciplinary effort in which scientists are digging into research focused on building and maintaining soil health. She's also a project scientist at the University of California at San Diego and program director at the Gilbert Lab, where she studies the role of the microbiome, and that's both the soil microbiome and the human microbiome. Okay, we'll talk about that in a range of environments, including the human body and soil. So I'm very excited. We're going to get started. So let's start with that as we talk about secrets of the soil. And the interesting thing is these two people, you may not know or may not assume, they actually are working together, which is why the organization that you're currently managing and running and this very new program at UCSD, at SIO, at Scripps Institute of Oceanography, is so novel and new and exciting. So tell us about your work and why is it at the Institute of Oceanography?
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for having me tonight. It's great to be here and to see you all here in this beautiful venue. Yes, we recently started the Soil Health Center at UC San Diego towards the end of last year. And it's really an effort to bring together researchers at the university who are working in agricultural and natural reserve systems across the world, really from different angles. So I'm a microbial ecologist. I study the microorganisms in many different environments, including the soil. We also have people from plant biologists to biogeochemists to social scientists, economists, public policy experts. Really, it's an effort to gather everyone together and develop new research ideas and innovations where we can have the biggest impact in our world. And why it's Scripps really is because, we have one Earth and everything is connected. We live along this beautiful coastline where this coastline is so important for the health of our ecosystems and our economies and our communities. And these coastlines are directly connected to the land nearby. The way that we treat the land impacts our oceans and our lakes and rivers and our groundwater. We really only have, I like this quote that all the water that ever will be is right now, I think is how it goes. Like everything is cycling all the time. And it's not that the water is staying where the water is right now. It's passing through the soil, going back to the atmosphere. And we really have to think about these systems as interconnected. And that's something that's really special about Scripps Institution of Oceanography is that we do study the oceans and rivers and different waterways, as well as lands in the atmosphere, and really think about those systems as being connected.
And there's also this interesting connection that, sort of I became more aware of in the production of the film, for example, is this idea that carbon, we know that healthy soil sequesters atmospheric carbon, which is one of the reasons why we can say it's beneficial not just for the food and the earth and the food that we eat, but it's also beneficial in that respect. And to the extent that the soil isn't, quote, doing its job because it's dead dirt and not healthy soil, which we're going to talk about, then what happens then is that we have higher levels of ocean acidification because the ocean sometimes has to pick up the slack for the earth. We've paved over the earth, and then the earth that we are using to grow, we may not be growing in a way that can sequester the same amount of carbon, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And we have the potential to sequester more carbon in the land that can support like the functioning of the entire earth, and that's something that we should be working towards. And it's really exciting that we have at Scripps scientists who study carbon sequestration in both the ocean and on the land, and we can learn from both those systems and think about them as connected.
But it is so important what you said. We have one Earth, right? Some of it has water and some of it is dry, but here we are. And as you said, I think that quote about all the water that's here is here now, and it just moves from place to place. It becomes salty, it becomes fresh, it, rain comes back down again. And here we are, and all of these systems work together. It's like an integrated organism, just like the human body. Now, let's talk about soil and dirt. What's the difference? I see a difference in color, but tell me about it.
Yeah, that's a good question. So today we brought soil from Ranchito Milkyway, where we're growing vegetables, where we've been raising the soil and vegetables in a very intentional no-till, low-till, heavy compost and organic way. And then some soil that honestly looks identical to the soil that we started with. So I can bring it up a little bit. So this, is what we're starting with, and a lot of people would call this dirt. And what I look at when I see this is what I'm not seeing is a lot of small insects. I'm not feeling moisture. And now, doesn't smell like very much. Like using all of the senses, like this is what maybe we can call dirt. Although I would also still call it soil, to be honest. And then this is the soil from Ranchito Milkyway after we've been amending it for many years. And so when you look in, you'll be able to find worms. You'll be able to find roly-polies, probably a lot of things that you can't see. Probably a lot of things that you can't see in that one as well. There's moisture, and when you smell it, you want to smell?
It does smell good. I smelled it earlier, I have to admit. There is nothing like that. Should we pass this bowl around the room? So I would ask you for a second. So she touched on that subject, but from a scientific, I love what you said, that all the senses make you immediately aware of the difference. And as a farmer, the difference and the impact that it has on what you grow. But back to the scientific perspective for a minute, what is the difference between these two?
Yeah, I would also call them both soil. Yeah. But it's amazing that you can see the visual difference there. And if we were to apply and smell the difference, which there are scientific ways of measuring that, you can sort of make some rankings there, but I won't get into those weeds. But there are very active microbial communities in healthy soils. There can be up to 1 billion microbial cells in a teaspoon of healthy soil. And those microbes are active and engaged in bringing the water through the soil, in supporting the plants that are growing there, sequestering carbon. They play so many roles in that soil. And they might be present in the less healthy soil there, but not able to be active and not getting fed and not getting the resources that they need. So I would wager a guess. In our lab, we study the microbial communities in soil. So we will actually, be very interested to see what you can see. Can you see that there are earthworms and roly-polies and good kind of clumping and even the smell? But if we extract the genetic information from that soil, extract the DNA of all the microbial communities are there, do we see a more diverse microbial community, including bacteria and fungi, and even viruses? And do we see, key species popping up there that we know are important for these key processes of carbon sequestration, nutrient cycling, releasing compounds into the soil that can improve the soil structure or that can improve the growth of plants? So I think it's really important that we have both. We have the understanding, boots on the ground from the farmer and with their experience of what a healthy soil is, and then bringing that together with the data that we can collect about the the pieces that you can't see, about the microorganisms that are there that are incredibly important.
So I think we should, if I can get a volunteer, maybe Christina, I'd love to pass these around. I mean, we don't want to be the only ones who are getting to appreciate the difference in the two. But I want to come back to you, two soils. You guys are both right. I call it dead dirt, but that's maybe unfair. They're both soil. Tell us a little bit more about, so you've taken this soil, you've amended it, you've taken it from the sort of less alive, less vibrant one into the one that you now are growing in. And what does that mean for you as a farmer?
Oh, it's huge. I think when we first started, we would, add 3-4 inches of compost, and then within 2 months, it would just be gone back to that soil. Like, it was really incredible. Like, sometimes people call compost soil food, and I hadn't really seen that until seeing it being completely eaten up. And so now when we add compost, it doesn't get eaten up as fast. What's happening is the soil is kind of reached, in my feeling, it's reached like a point in which it can hold moisture, it can hold nutrients, it can hold life without us constantly feeding it. We still give it a lot, but it has this amount of life
in good
it.
health now.
It's in a good health that it can hang on by itself a little bit, and it stays that color. Before, it wouldn't have stayed that color. The beds I got that from, I don't think had gone in compost for maybe a month or two. So that's just their soil.
They're just happy soil.
They're just happy soil. So what that means for us is the water holding capacity is even, right? So when we want to seed something, it's more likely it's going to germinate because the soil can stay moist. And also just in terms of watering, we don't have to water the same amount, or really the evenness, the distribution is more fair. And then the plants are way more healthy. I mean, they're more resilient to diseases. They're more resilient to neglect, probably. They're definitely thriving and then producing a lot more. So as a farmer, I'm seeing, maybe we were producing enough cucumbers on probably double the space for maybe 20 boxes a week. And now we're producing over 100 pounds of cucumbers in probably half that space, because the soil is much more, 100 pounds of cucumbers every week, because the soil is much more resilient. It's not perfect. We're still dealing with different diseases that are coming up in different ways, different infestations, but it's super apparent that it's not nearly what we were up against back in the day.
So you raised two things that I want to ask you about now. The first one is water, because we understand that having healthy soil, prevents sort of the kind of runoff when it rains and everything goes away. Instead, it's absorbed into the soil. But there are lots of other ways in which healthy soil, manages water, filters water. Talk to us a little bit about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're sort of biological, chemical, and physical components of how soil can hold on to water. Having healthy microbial communities that are active, they'll actually release sticky substances into the soil that can help form those aggregates that kind of change the pore space and slow down the water as it's going through to the right, kind of to a helpful speed.
Instead of shooting on by or flooding.
Instead of either scooting off the top or just going through too fast, they can release substances that can really build that soil structure in a physical way. That's a really important way that the microbial communities can contribute. And I think the compost itself, or using mulch, or having kind of living roots more in the soil that are also expanding that region more. That's part of that physical change as well. Microbial communities in the soil have this really direct and amazing interaction with plants, where they can actually increase the root growth, which increases the plant's ability to extend the reach of where they can take up water, and is also changing the physical structure.
Makes them stronger and more able to withstand potentially neglect.
Yeah. And there are also fungal networks that are another kind of physical extension there as well, that are important as well.
And she also talked about sort of productivity, how much more the soil gives you back. And I think I want to ask you about that, but also not just how much, but is there a difference in the produce that's grown in a healthy live soil as opposed to one that might be grown in commercial, conventional agriculture with the use of additives, chemical-based additives?
Yeah, there's definitely growing research and interest into the nutritional content of different crops that are grown in healthy soils. And I think also when you have more resilient soils, you may be able to grow a more diverse range of varieties of crops that are going to do better in those soils. Because I think some of the problems we have with nutrient density in our food as a country is that we've really optimized agriculture for producing as much as possible, for getting yield, for things that can be stored in the grocery store, and not for flavor and not for nutrients,
right,
and not for health. So I think they're a little bit interconnected, that in more regeneratively managed soils or more healthy soils, you might have the ability to be able to grow more sort of heirloom varieties that might have more of those nutrients and health benefits. And I think it's all connected.
So and I keep going back to the film because it's all sort of related to me, but in the first film and in others as well, we featured a man named Ray Archuleta who was with the USDA, and he would talk about soil and health, and he mentioned, and this one really stuck with me at the time, that in agricultural colleges across the United States, that the soil was simply taught as the growing medium, not as something that you needed to tend to just as much as you do the yield that you want to pull out of it. And so I appreciated what you said about the first years were about feeding the soil, because the soil is as important as the product that you take out of it at the end, both for your yield, for what other reasons to you? What does it matter to you?
Well, it's still the main focus of our farm is always the soil. Like if we see the plant is struggling, then we don't look at the plant. We look at the soil. Like that's just how the soil is. We're like like how the soil was prepared is going to influence all of those things. And so our soil preparation is most of that. So yeah, like the feeding, it's kind of crazy to ever think that you would be more focused on the plant than the soil, because the soil is where everything is happening, where you'll be able to grow your plant from. So for us, it's really important for being able to make a living, because that's how the soil is giving us the food. Yes, the varieties matter a lot for flavor and for disease resilience and that type of thing, but the soil is where all of that is coming from. It's like our deepest relationship beyond our community is our soil.
I think of something Jane Goodall said, which was, why did we ever think it was a good idea to use poison to grow food, right? And it's sort of, well, and I think that goes back to what you just started to say, which is community. And why does it matter to you how you grow your food for your community?
I mean, that's huge. For Ranchito Milkyway, our main goal is to have people be able to see their food being grown. So actually on our farm, you're able to come on a Sunday, get your produce, but you're also able to walk around and see it being grown. So for our community, we're very intentional about the physical connection, the sight of it, because vegetables are beautiful when they're being grown. Um, and people want to talk about all of the other reasons why you should eat specific things, but the joy that it brings you to have that connection is really beyond anything. And I think both my husband and I, we didn't really come from that background where we were valuing that, where it was like, oh, like that wasn't, we were just your average kids, your average people growing up without that connection. And when we discovered for ourselves in different ways what it feels like to connect to your food, that's what we wanted to bring. And then when you make that connection, you definitely want it to be healthy. You definitely want to use the practices that are going to thrive, like help your plants thrive, help the food. I mean, the idea of even applying poison is like something that I need to be careful around. If for example, like if I shouldn't be touching it because it's poisonous, that would be crazy to put it on food. I understand like part of what like our base of growing is this quote, the good and the bad are one. It's from Korean natural farming, and it's this idea that nothing is completely bad or completely good. When I look at people applying pesticide, I completely understand. You're either, sometimes it's the choice between growing it and not growing it. Like we have bagrata beetle right now, and we like in the plot that has it, we can't grow broccoli, we can't grow greens mix, we can't grow turnips, radishes, anything in the brassica family. So some people are faced with that decision, and it's like, yeah, maybe a little bit of Like maybe a little bit of poison wouldn't be that bad if you're able to grow all of that. For us, that's never been part of our ethos, not part of our not part of what we do. But yeah, so
You talked for a minute about sort of the light going on for you and your husband and making the change, and that it didn't come naturally. Like I think probably most people in America, if you didn't grow up on a farm, you're probably pretty far away from a farm, and you buy your food at a grocery store and it's wrapped in something or it's in a refrigerator. So probably most people came from that same background. What was it that sort of flipped that switch for you?
for me, I was well. I told you earlier. I was studying business, and I got the chance to WOOF, which is Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms, and I woofed in France on a goat dairy farm, and that was amazing. And we milked goats and shepherded, and it was a really beautiful experience. And that inspired me to go into dairy farming. And so actually, I don't think I would call myself even at dairy farming point where I am today in terms of organic. Like I was in conventional dairy farming. I worked on 2 years milking cows in a conventional setting, like the ones you see in the scary documentaries. Like I loved it. Like I loved going into the dairy pit and milking cows. Like none of that even rang like an alarm to me until I joined the Peace Corps and I moved to Madagascar, and I lived in a community where people like pesticide isn't even a thing, right? People are not using anything genetically modified either, not necessarily for the reasons you might think, but really because they had so much pride in what they were growing. And the food was so different. And so I think that really exposed me to different ways of growing and just understanding that how you grow really matters. I don't think I ever thought
what you grow, but how you grow.
I don't think I ever thought about soil when I thought about dairy farming. And then, but in reality, how the feed is raised for dairy cows is going to make a huge influence on everything, right? So I think that's where I came to that point. And then from my husband's side, he grew up in San Diego, and he didn't think of anything. He was raised completely on fast food, like all the time.
Which is very typical American experience. I mean, it really is.
And his mom got breast cancer, and she's fine now, but that's where he started to think about what impacts health. And so he actually wanted to learn how to grow wheat as a like a part of the medical like regimen that he wanted to try out for her. And then he started to learn about soil. And I think that's a huge way to get in to understanding how important soil is growing marijuana. I can't believe I'm saying that because I'm not.
We had a whole panel on
I don't want
weed.
to do that. I'm not, but that's where the cutting edge growing is, and there's on organic because they're so focused on the health of the plant.
I'm going to say that it always has been because we used to go to Eco Farm, and when I did a goat farm stint as well, and I'll never forget one of the founders of Eco Farm, on a panel saying, "Look, let's be honest, seed saving here started with wheat, and that's okay. So it's still we did have a panel on weed, which you can watch on UCTV." And the reason we talked about it is like, it's not just the end product that one might smoke, but there's a lot of different things. There's, the plant itself, we can eat this plant. There's lots of different ways. It's a fully medicinal plant and, has lots of benefits that aren't just limited to the fun side. So, but it's true that a lot of early understanding of seed saving of organic practices began. Here we are in California. So back to you. Let's talk about, what are you thinking about what we're talking about right now? How do you feel about this?
Well, I'm just thinking I had not opposite, but kind of a little bit different of a trajectory where I grew up in Vermont, very surrounded by farms. My mom grew up on a dairy farm with cows, conventional as well, but very connected to like big garden, composting. We had chickens. Like to me, that was normal. And then I think as I grew up and moved away from home, then I realized that was not the norm for most people. And I was always really interested. My grandparents had a really beautiful farm in Vermont that was like 400 acres of mostly forest, and then some. They had animals and some vegetables and all that. And when it came time for the farm to pass into new hands, I was like 19, and I was like, I sure would love to like run this farm and make it like an education center and a music venue and grow healthy food for the community, but I had like no way of knowing how to do that and no resources to do that. So I was not able to do that, but I was able to kind of hold on to my love and interest of being really connected to agricultural communities and I had always been really interested in science to think like, okay, maybe I'm not going to be a farmer myself, but maybe I can take my interest and excitement about science to then bring that aspect to help support agriculture, to help support people who want to be growing in a way that's very, very focused on soil and on producing healthy food for the communities, to be able to do that, because it is a struggle financially for a lot of farms that want to be able to operate that way. And unfortunately, they don't always have the income from like marijuana operations. Like I wish we had more value on
produce,
and on
dairy
healthy foods,
or
so that it
animals.
wasn't such a difficult decision for so many farmers about which practices they can afford to adopt or not. So I think that's been sort of my journey in this area. I have not yet worked on a goat farm, but maybe.
So we had this conversation before we started tonight that both of us had a goat farm experience, and I'm a lawyer by day, and I took a sabbatical from that to go work on a goat farm to learn to care for goats, milk them, make cheese, and it was the beginning of my journey that ultimately landed me creating the Very Good Night Dinner and also Very Good Foundation, so Very Good Food Foundation. So we all came to it differently, but I will say that people often would ask me, so why do you care about organic? Which you can get organic, biodynamic, regenerative, they're labels, but we have some understanding it's generally contrasting with conventional or chemical based, but where they land and what they mean at different times is not always the same. But for me, people would say, well, why when did this become a thing for you? When did you get onto the bandwagon? And I actually grew up in Germany, so it wasn't like a new thing for me. I lived in a city, but we had a farm on the edge of town, which was pretty common then. We had cows and we had chickens and we had a goat and we had a farm and we grew produce. And, the European lifestyle is very different from the American one. I never saw McDonald's until I was in high school, or went to university in America, and then of course had my dalliance with it. But the thing is that you go to the bread store and you go to the chicken store and you go to the beef store. It's a very different way, and I think what we've sort of discovered over time is there's a healthfulness in that model that maybe what we created in the aftermath of the Second World War, which was an effort to truly address, poverty and lack of nutrition and make food widely available across a big country quickly. So I think probably initially it had very good intentions. And what we might have discovered with hindsight is that there's a cost to pay, and that the highly processed food or the food grown in conventional soil or with a larger chemical load doesn't react the same way. And I want you to talk for a minute, because I know you also focus, we're going to go off, but the soil microbiome, and how does that relate to the gut microbiome? Because that really is the dialogue about why does this kind of food, why does it matter? Why does it matter how we grow it? I mean, yes, we're caring for ourselves, we're caring for the soil, we're caring for our community, but does it also, does it affect my health, what I choose, which bread, which potato, which dairy?
Well, once again, we're all connected, right? So the way that we live our lives, there's so many different choices that we make in our lives that affect our health, and also our gut microbiome, which is intimately connected to our health. The microorganisms in our gut can influence, susceptibility to different diseases or progression of different diseases, even reaction to different drugs that you might take to work with different diagnoses. Our mental health. There's so many ways that the gut microbiome influences us. And so, of course, what we're eating has a huge impact, because when we're eating food ourselves, we're also feeding our gut microbiome. And there's a lot of research out there about the benefits of fiber on feeding beneficial microorganisms that are beneficial for our health in many different ways, including our mental health, as well as eating a diversity of fruits and vegetables. Kind of eat the rainbow is very good for your microorganisms as well. So I think there's the direct connection there, and I think there's also a really important connection with beyond the gut microbiome of kind of what Alyssa was talking about, of the connection to the farms. I don't think we should forget how disconnected people can be from their food systems, and the multiple benefits that it can bring to get that interaction either on the farm or at a farmer's market, or at somewhere like Food Shed, somewhere that's bringing the food and making people feel more connected to their food. I know there's also a lot of school garden programs more and more. There's one at my daughter's school that's really great. There's a lot of growing initiatives to build that connection back as people kind of get farther and farther away from that direct experience that they've had in their lives on farms. So I think there's the health benefits and the microbiome benefits of eating a diversity of fresh fruits and vegetables, as well as the benefits of interacting and like building that community. It all kind of fits together.
And you talked a little bit about some of the things you do that are directed at, building community or engaging with the community, the farm stand. You also have a CSA. Tell us a little bit more about that, explore that, because I think this is fundamental, right? If you want people to care and understand, first you try to give them knowledge, and then you get them somehow with school gardens, community projects like yours, to reconnect with the source of their food and to understand why it does, in fact, matter how it's grown.
So our CSA and our farm stand are one. We open every Sunday. We set up our farm stand, and people are CSA members. So CSA,
sorry.
Yes.
Just want to,
Yes.
for everybody, what is the CSA?
What is CSA?
Yeah,
So
sorry, because not everyone knows. So,
CSA,
we take it for granted.
Yeah, I know. Oh my God. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So basically, you buy into a season, and you get vegetables and fruits, depending on what CSA you're getting, every week, every other week, depending on the cadence. But you're supporting a farm up front before they have grown all of those vegetables, and then you get the bounty of their production. And the way we started, very similar, the very traditional method of just giving people everything that we grew and packing those boxes. And slowly we started to notice that some people, I think it was actually at Suncoast Farmers Market, where we had displayed some big zucchinis as like just decoration, and someone was like, "Can I buy that?" And everybody bought all of our big zucchinis. And we were like, "Oh my gosh, no, but we cannot predict what people want.
Yeah.
Like why do we have it in our mind that this is waste and this is not waste?" And so we made the CSA like a free choice farm stand, so you could choose what you wanted.
Oh, that's
And
nice.
so people could choose that they don't want okra, they don't have to pick up okra. They want double okra, they can get double okra. Some people, we also source from other local farms through Food Shed, which is a cooperative. And so we know all those farms because Food Shed isn't just a cooperative that, does business, but we also get to know each other. So we know those farmers, we know their practices, and we host those farmers' produce as well. And so at our farm stand, we probably have at least 20 to 30 different things that you can choose from. You pick out your vegetables. I also bake sourdough. We do lots of like recipe books. There's just a lot of people interacting with each other as well, because people are coming. It's not having your kids at the grocery store trying to control them type of thing. Like the kids are running around too. And so people aren't as like in a rush. And so people are sharing recipes with each other, which we really love. And then, you pick your veggies, you might get your extras, and then you head off. You can walk around the farm. You can bring your friends. You can walk around the farm, check things out, ask us questions. The day I was just thinking about it, this is my own deep little thought that maybe isn't fully fleshed out, so I'm sorry.
That's good. This is where we want. We're ready for it.
I like in our busy days, especially people who aren't farmers, but even us as farmers, there's this idea that, there's a time to sow your seeds and a time to reap and harvest. But even as farmers, we don't have that distinguishing moment. Like we're constantly, especially in this economy, we're like constantly growing, constantly harvesting, constantly moving in that way. And I understand that
I don't get to take a
there's
pause.
there's no distinguishing those two things. And I think that's true for many professions. But for us, I think we have to decide, well, when is that moment? When are we going to enjoy our harvest? And that's Sundays for us. That's our day to like reap and enjoy and spend time with people, not to be selling people, not to be, forcing people to buy pickles. Like, it's like, no, this is our time to really enjoy this moment. And then we can get back to the grind afterward.
It's interesting what you said about CSAs, because it's true, a lot of people are intimidated, especially, as we've become disconnected from not just growing, but preparing food, because our lives are busy. We work more hours. Maybe we have 2 jobs. We have families. And so, it became difficult. So the CSA is great because A, it supports the farmers in the community, and B, you're getting what's fresh, local, and seasonal. So it's obviously the best price. and it's local. So there's a million reasons why it's good. But people are nervous and intimidated because they get this produce that they've never cooked before. They don't know what to do with it. And and then yours is a great idea, which is like, okay, just get what you want. But there is still that okra or that other vegetable that you've grown. And one of the things we did in my brief sabbatical with the goat farm, I also opened a restaurant and we had a cooking school. And one of the things we did is we brought a chef in with a CSA box and we'd say, this is what comes in this box this week. What can you make with this? So that people could come and learn, and learn like, okay, he had no, prior warning about what was going to be in the box and what things could you make? Or what could you prepare on one day of the week that you could have in your fridge for the rest of the week? Like, how can we do this? And I thought that was really beneficial to get people, because if you're going to ask people to come back and, pay attention to the farm, to the soil, to the method of growing, and not just choosing the same item that they're familiar with, but something new and different, you have to sort of give them the tools to do that too, I think. Which is, you do that too at your facility. You do classes, not on seafood, soil, all kinds of things.
Yeah, at Scripps we have a new innovation kitchen, and there's been some really amazing events there. There's some called Get to Know a Fish, which is a collaboration between NOAA and it's a great name, between NOAA and Scripps Institution of Oceanography, where they bring in the people who caught the fish and a chef and scientists who study that particular fish, just to have a conversation and allow people to ask questions and for people to learn. They're pretty amazing events. And we have visions of creating one like this connected to food and farming as well. So we'll talk about that.
I was just going to say, later. So you've already worked together, and you can talk about that just for a second, but that there is definitely a collaboration here for that kind of event, because everything that you described that you do on your Sundays and the community and the food and everything, and now just add a scientific perspective. You're brilliant students in the back with some of their handouts and the materials. That's like the next chapter, because it also gives people more information about, wow, I feel really good about supporting my neighbor, my community. I think this is good for my health, but now I've got, some evidence to support it as well. So I hope this is a future collaboration. I feel like we could sit up here and probably talk for the next 5 hours. I might want some wine, but we are about to wrap it up and open the floor to questions and answers. But before we do, is there anything that you haven't said that you'd like to say?
I think I'd just like to say, if people are thinking about how can I support, farms that are, and you can speak to this too, Alyssa, but, how can this all sounds great. Like there should be more focus on building soil health. Like what do we need to make that happen? I think the two things are going out and engaging with your local farms and becoming a part of that community. And then on a higher level, we really need more support for farmers to be able to change their practices. So I think at finding places where you can advocate with your, elected representatives about different opportunities to become a part of that conversation is also really important. And also, continuing to have resources available for science and for research, because farmers are facing a lot of challenges, even more with the with climate change and extreme weather events that we're seeing, and they need solutions, and we need the research to continue to back that up. So I would say I like the idea of both engaging on a very hyper local level of what can I do in my community that's very direct, but then also I think thinking bigger to how we can engage on a government scale really to enact change is important as well.
One of the farmers in our circle always says, community, not commodity. And I think that's sort of a way to think. You're absolutely right. Become engaged in your community, but remember that you can make choices. You make a choice every time you decide where to spend your money on what you feed yourself, your family. And, you're not only going to be supporting your community and a better way of growing things when you buy local, but you're probably also going to be getting a better product at a better price. So it's a kind of a no-brainer. The trajectory for what's good for me, what's good for my community and the environment is actually a fairly straight line. And please, what would you like to add?
Yeah, I think that was a great way to say it. I think on top of that, I would say, it really does matter. When you support a small farm, every box matters. It's, when we first started, we had 12 people buying from us, and that's what got us through. 1 out of 12 is a very, that's a small number. And when you, right now, if you came to us, you might be 1 out of, 40. That's that's a big impact for us. And some people aren't always going to be, they're not members, they're walking in, right? But each time they walk in, that's a really big deal for any small scale farmer, is because that is their livelihood. And that's how, if that is the way you can support it, that's going to be a huge thing for them. So I think it really does matter when you make those choices. And you can't always make those choices. You can't say 100% of the time, I'm going to be like this. But when you make small choices like that, even if it's once a month, even if it's once every 6 months, you only need so many people to make those choices once every 6 months.
Small choices, really big impact.
Huge impact.
And I'm glad that you also said, and then to the extent everybody is in their own space in whatever capacity they have, think about how you can engage in a larger, join a panel, come to a panel like this, go online, speak to your elected officials, think about ways in which you can engage. We're all in this together. We have one planet underwater and soil, and we have to do the best that we can to keep it. So thank you, everybody, for coming, and thank you, UCTV. All right.
Hey, thank you guys so much. That was amazing to hear you guys speak. My name's Ranchito. I'm co-founder of a company called Adera, and we're like a longevity wellness company. Basically, we source ingredients from local regenerative farms and create a supplement in San Diego. And one of the things that I've been thinking about is, how do we get the end consumer to realize the value of regeneratively sourced ingredients? Because I feel like we need to see a shift in consumer values to buying ingredients and paying that premium price point for these regeneratively grown ingredients before we see, a big shift in the farmers. So what's a way to market it as a company, and how do we get more companies to start sourcing from regenerative farms?
Personally, I think like hands-on experience is definitely going to be what changes you. Like going to a farm changed both of us just by going there and experiencing for a short period of time goats, right? Neither of us are in goat farming anymore. Like that.
I sort of am.
You still have goats, right?
I'm still a registered dairy goat. I have the goats of La Jolla. Don't tell my neighbors.
So I think like creating more opportunities for those hands-on experiences. It sounds super slow. Like it's not going to give you the quickest return, but I think it's going to be a lot more of a long-term impact that will like really change. And of course, school gardens are where that starts. I don't meet a single kid anymore that doesn't know what composting is, because school gardens have pretty much been able to at least teach composting, which I don't know. I don't think anyone in this room probably learned about composting in school. So like those things are changing. They might not be composting yet, but they know what it is. And I think so the more hands-on experience is the only way to, maybe not the only way, but the most effective way to get people to understand regenerative. Like regenerative specifically, it's hard to understand what it looks like when a farm is building soil rather than consuming soil until you see it happening. But yeah.
No, and I want to say that I do think media has played a role in this last decade, something that has gone from what was essentially outside of the scientific community and the farming community, perhaps a fringe-ish notion, or certainly wasn't well known, has become very mainstream. And I think there have been a lot of reports recently, I'm trying to see you around the camera, a lot of reports recently that have shown that the knowledge about regenerative agriculture, the term itself, what it means, why it matters, through a number of projects, including documentary films like the ones I talked about, but lots of projects like that. I think people are becoming more aware. I think, in fact, in the last 10 years, we've made tremendous ground. Of course, there's lots more to do, and you want more people to understand, but I do think it's happening. It happens at the farm. It happens with, concentrated media projects, and it happens with science.
Oh, it's so true. So many people come to our farm because they've seen those specific documentaries. Mm-hmm. Our landlords were open to hosting us because of a documentary. So I 100% agree with the documentary.
Yeah, and I think it's an interesting time where, used to be documentaries were not as popular, but they've become very big, and, they're as popular and as widely seen as many blockbuster hits. So people really are hungry for this information, and it's like the antidote to the kind of mainstream centralized information that people are getting, the one that told you to go through the drive-through and that everything was okay, right? So it is good, and I think people want it, and they're it's out there, and I do think it is making an impact. But.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And I think you are seeing more like large mainstream companies have programs focused on regenerative agriculture, which is, you want to take with a grain of salt and make sure that there are proper kind of certifications and things happening to make sure that is actually contributing towards enhanced soil health. But I don't think we saw that like 5 or 10 years ago. And I think part of that is due to consumer demand because people are more aware of what how we treat our soil and how that impacts our lives on the planet. So I definitely see things moving more in that direction. So I think, bringing it back to the personal connection is always like, I think people can see and understand a little bit more now about the impacts about what they're consuming and how it came to them. What are the considerations along the way?
Thank you for that. Anyone else?
So with the theme, Secrets of the Soil, I'm imagining all of you speaking to the entity of soil as like a conversation, and you get to ask it, like, what's your biggest secret? What do you think soil would say?
Love it. I actually think you touched on it a little bit when you talked about the networks that are down there, that, the microbial networks, the fungal, all of this, like this is not widely known, and it's magic. What goes on under the soil is much greater and far more diverse than anything that pops up out top that we might harvest to eat.
Yeah. I mean, that's well said. I was just thinking like, what would what I would think soil would say is like, you don't know me. Like there's so much we have left to learn about, and, I focus on the microbial communities, but like we can only culture like 1 to 10% of the, probably closer to 1% of the microbes that are there. We don't know even what is there, and we're trying to learn more and more and more. And that's why this research is so important about how those networks are built and what they're exchanging and what we can learn about that we can, build into creating new innovations for improving our world. But there's still so much left to learn. So I would say like, not everybody has at the top of their mind that soil is alive. So that might be the secret for some people. And that there's just so much complexity there that we can't even begin to understand yet.
And we know much less about soil microbiome than we do, for example, gut microbiome. And you said, maybe 10%, a tiny bit. It's like the beginning of the edge of the universe that we're beginning to discover. And each new discovery leads to a direct connection to human health.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. You don't know me. You don't know me. Okay, back to you.
I think I'd be surprised. I think the soil would be surprised to find out that we think we are separate from the soil. Like, just, when you look at a worm, is the worm separate from the soil? Like if the soil is alive? And so like, are we really that much different than a worm? So I think the soil would be, like, what do you mean? Why did you separate yourself from me so much? Like, give me your poop. Like, you are a part of me, right? Would be, I think, what the soil is.
Don't forget about me. You know? Don't treat me just as something to generate your food, but, we are all one, as Dr. Bronner would say. Okay.
Thank you. This is so exciting to have this discussion together. I was thinking that a lot of people come across some of these ideas in today's world, in the United States and around the world, when they have a personal health crisis. Mm-hmm. And actually there are a lot of amazing companies that have originated when people have all of a sudden had personal circumstances where they have to make a quick change about what they put in their bodies or on their bodies. And it's something I've experienced personally. I know a lot of people who've had that journey, and what it takes me to is how connected we all are, whether we know it or not. And that sometimes it takes a health crisis, to really kind of take the kind of the cloak or the curtain off of our eyes, and we start to see that and feel it. And my greatest hope is that this kind of conversation is taking us in that direction, where we realize we all are connected all the time, like you were saying about the soil. And I find that so inspiring and so comforting. It's just that it's not the norm yet in our culture in the United States. And so I think the answer to the question about what we need to do to bring about this shift is a little bit of everything all at once, right? Because some people learn better through documentaries, other people learn better through personal experience. Some people like to read books, or magazines. It really can be anything. But I'm just really energized to be part of this conversation, because it really does take all of us in our own way coming together, however we can contribute. And it's so immediately important, isn't it? So thank you.
We typically, when we have hosted these dialogues in the past, we have more people on stage with more diverse backgrounds, really circling like we did the very first Soil Matters panel. And I always said that, for example, the idea was I just want one piece of information from any one of the people on stage to resonate with everyone in the audience. If you just walk away with one little bit, that one tiny kernel that takes you home that says, I want to read more. I want to meet my farmers. I want to learn about that. I can read articles. I want to take some steps, something that triggers a response in me, in everyone in the audience, and says, what can I do to A, eat better for myself, better for my community and the environment? And, soil is the great connector of all things. And I love the two quotes and ends. You don't know me, and don't forget about me. And
I'm part of you.
I'm part of you.
I am you.
And that is the closing thought for tonight. And I want to thank everyone for coming. It was exciting to have you here to listen. As I said, we could probably go on for hours, but we unfortunately have to stop. But I hope you'll join us again. I hope you will learn more about the work they're doing. I hope you will go and visit her farm on a Sunday and just experience what that's like. And I hope you're inspired to take any other action in your own life. So thanks again.